The movie begins in the offices of a company called Cybertronics. The owner of this company, Professor Alan Hobby, wants to advance mechanical technology and create works that will be loved. When his colleagues mention their units of love, Mr. Hobby corrects them. He is not talking about physical love, but emotional love like a child loves its mother. The story then shifts to his future 18 months in the future. The Swinton family is currently freezing their son Martin until they can find a cure for his debilitating disease. His mother Monica could not mentally cope with the situation that would take her son away from her. Her husband Henry, an employee of Cybertronics, wants to help her cope, and she takes part in a test where she becomes part of the family of David, the company's newest mecha. David is the culmination of hobbyist research to develop robots that can love. At first, Monica was angry and believed that her husband was trying to replace Martin. However, Monica tries to accommodate David. Henry also tells her that if she decides to leave her David, she will have to imprint on him. However, if she decides that she no longer needs him, David must be sent back to Cybertronics to be destroyed, as the mark is permanent. After some time, Monica decides to perform the imprinting process. She reads a list of words that activate David's emotional simulation. When she does this, David calls her mommy and begins acting like a real child. To provide David with another form of companionship, she gives him a robotic teddy bear named Teddy that once belonged to Martin. Things seem to be going well for the Swinton family until Martin is nursed back to health with a cure. Martin sees David not as a human being, but as a super toy or doll. One day, Martin asks his mother to read Pinocchio to him. David falls in love with a story in which a carved wooden doll turns into a real boy thanks to the Blue Fairy. A jealous Martin then tries to get David into trouble in various ways. First, he convinces David to eat spinach. This leaves David dysfunctional and in need of cleaning. At one point, Martin tells David to cut off some of Monica's hair while she sleeps as a sign of love, leading Henry to believe that David was trying to attack his wife. At Martin's birthday party, one of his friends decided to test David to see if he could feel pain. The test resulted in David grabbing Martin and screaming, "Protect me." The two fell into the Swintons' swimming pool, and David appeared to try to drown Martin. Henry believes David is no longer safe and convinces Monica to return David for destruction. Monica pretends to have a picnic and tries to take David to Cybertronics. However, she couldn't bring herself to take David directly to Cybertronics and leave him in the forest with Teddy. David becomes frightened and confused, wondering why he was forced to leave his mother. Meanwhile, Gigolo Joe, a male prostitute, comes to the apartment of a woman he meets regularly. He changes her appearance to suit her, and when he enters her bedroom, he finds her dead. Her husband shows up, kisses his wife and says, "I may have killed you, but you killed me first." But Joe backs away and says that the woman's husband is the one responsible for the murder. "I realize that I am blaming myself." Joe runs out of the apartment building and cuts off his license plate to avoid detection by the police. Still in the forest, David wonders if he has abandoned himself because he is not real like Martin, and if he finds the Blue Fairy, like in the story Pinocchio, she can make him real. I come to the conclusion that he will, and that he can too. Go home. On his journey through the forest, he encounters many abandoned, obsolete, and broken down mechas, including Gigolo Joe, who searches the Cybertronic trash heap for spare parts that he can repair himself. The mechas are rounded up by a man named Lord Johnson Johnson and taken to a meat fair, where they are destroyed for the entertainment of anti-mech fanatics. When the Flesh Fair staff examines David, they discover that it is a more advanced mecha than anything he has ever encountered, and offer to save him from destruction. Unfazed, Johnson Johnson grabs David and takes him to the destruction ring. When several buckets of acid are about to be thrown at him and Joe, David screams and shows fear like a real boy. The crowd revolts against Johnson, and as a riot breaks out, David and Joe are released and leave. Escaping into the close-by woods, David tells Joe of his look for the Blue Fairy. Joe is assured that they'll discover her in an area referred to as Rouge City. Hitching a journey with a few teenagers, they make it to the city, a mecca of grown-up leisure that opponents Las Vegas and Disneyland. Their adventure takes them to an area in which an informed PC illustration of Einstein, referred to as Dr. No, tells them that the blue fairy may be found on the quit of the arena in which the lions weep. Joe explains to David that Dr. No ought to suggest an area referred to as Manhattan, as many mechas have long passed to the quit of the arena and feature in no way come back. David is fascinated with going to Manhattan in spite of the danger. However, Joe attempts to discourage him, pronouncing that it may be a trap. As David and Joe depart the building, Joe is accosted with the aid of using officers, who've come to arrest him for murder, a truth David is unaware of. Seeing a car sitting close by referred to as an amphibicopter, David takes the controls and manages to launch Joe from the clutches of the officers. Joe receives in and takes the controls, guiding them to Manhattan. Their adventure leads them to the flooded New York City, in which they discover the Cybertronics building, on which take a seat-down statues of lions weeping water from their eyes. David enters a room, in which he reveals any other mecha that appears similar to him. However, feeling this replica will be making plans to take his mom far from him, David destroys it in a jealous rage. Professor Hobby then shows up and tells David that he is Dr. Hobby. No once takes him home and tells David that the blue fairy is just a myth. Hobby leaves David alone to find the team members who designed him. David wanders through Hobby's office and discovers various mechanical items that aid in his creations, as well as fully packaged David and Darlene equipment for consumer purchase. Her presence makes David feel even worse, because his journey into the world leaves him with no chance of regaining his mother's love. David exits the Cybertronic building and jumps into the water below. As he was swimming in the water, he suddenly saw something flashing in the distance. Before he could go any further, he was caught in one of the amphibious amphibicopter's claws and pulled out of the water. David tells Joe on the other side of the water that he saw the blue fairy and that she is below her. However, before Joe can help David, another amphibious amphibicopter appears and takes Joe prisoner. Before being lifted into the sky, Joe activates the amphibicopter's dive function and sends David underwater. David and Teddy drive the car deep into the flooded city and find themselves in the remains of the Kenai Island amusement park. David leads the car into the park's fairland and finds a blue fairy statue in a Pinocchio-style area. However, while piloting the vehicle, a nearby Ferris wheel collapses, leaving the amphibious copter stranded near the statue. David is not worried at all. He is glad that he finally found the blue fairy. Then he begins to pray to her and wishes her to become a real boy. 2,000 years have passed, during which time the world has been covered by a new ice age, and humanity has almost become extinct. Ice excavation involves advanced mechas from the future excavating and studying the remains of the culture or species that created them. An excavation team working at the Kenai Island amusement park encounters David and Teddy frozen in an amphibious amphibicopter. While tracing David and Teddy's memories, they are surprised to discover that he once lived among humans. Using David and Teddy's memories, they create a fictional reality of the Swinton house, where David encounters a creature similar to the blue fairy. David wants to become a real boy and see Monica again. The blue fairy explains that Monica cannot be turned into reality and that Monica has been dead for 2,000 years. The blue fairy tells David that he can bring others back, but all David wants is Monica. Teddy explains that he needs samples of hair and other human tissue, and David shows him the hair he cut from Monica's head. David demands that the blue fairy can take Monica back since he has Monica's hair. The blue fairy says it can be done and David is taken to his room. Moments later, one of the mechas from the future comes and tells David about his desire to bring Monica back to life. Mecha explains that human resurrection has proven in the past to be impermanent, and such resurrections can only live for one day. Despite this revelation, David still wishes to see Monica again. A futuristic mecha grants his wish, and the revived Monica, David, and Teddy spend the entire day together, doing everything they can. When it's time to go to bed, a revived Monica tells David she loves him. With this knowledge, David himself finally fell into a content and happy sleep.